Welcome to the Going Green podcast, and today we've got a new government, and let's hope a new climate strategy rather than sort of the old one, or
Well,
perhaps not even having one.
well, yeah, I mean, there's a slight difference in the fact that this is technically a new cabinet as opposed to being a new, I say government. That's the wrong way to put it.
Well, it is really because we got a new prime minister, Liz Truss, and she's appointed a new cabinet. And you know what they say, a new broom, it causes all sorts of problems. I think, isn't that the one? Yeah, it leaves bits and pieces all over the carpet. I think that's what we say. A new broom leaves little bits all over the carpet. So yeah, maybe. So we've got a new minister for climate change, Graham Stuart MP, and we wish him the very best of luck. And we're on your side until you prove you're not on our side. So well, we hope for the very best from you, and that we hope that we're going to basically achieve going green.
Yes, more precisely, is achieve the targets and goals set by, I say that by Boris Johnson when he came into power, when he ratified in law that we were going to hit some climate targets by 2030 and 2050, as in there are two sets.
And of course, he was not there. And of course, basically, we won't probably have this government there at that time. But this government's got to make some headway in 2 years to try to sort of, well, get things going a little bit more. The previous sort of government didn't really sort of get things going. Some things did, but not as great. We've seen some more wind farms come online, that were set up, and they're going nicely. But we're into another problem, which is this economic crisis, which is caused by, the gas price basically increasing across the world. And of course, when gas goes up, the cost of electricity generation goes up, even though we've got sort of 50% gas and we've got quite a few bits of renewable, and it's not making much difference.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it?
a bit of a laugh, sort of. The energy price goes up, and yet, of course, in relation to gas, except of course, some of it's not powered by gas. So, should it go as much? Yeah, that's someone else to decide. But no, the one of the critical things, of course, is in relation to the gas problem, is that currently there in the world, of course, there is a shortage of supply and a large demand. So the simplest way to solve this is essentially having more supply to fit the demand. And so Liz Truss has just announced that well, I say one of her campaign pledges, more precisely, was that she would like to see an increase in gas extraction from the North Sea. This is new licenses and all sorts of North Sea oil based things, and then of course we could ship them into the UK for use in the UK, but mostly to help reduce the need of external gas and oil supplies, and hopefully to reduce the prices down. So that's the idea and plan. Of course, there's the problem of already you're trying to put more gas and oil into the UK, which of course means that we're going to be burning more gas for power.
More CO2 then. That's our problem. Any escaping gas, of course, that's methane, and that's what we said many times before, 40 times as potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And we're trying to measure things in carbon dioxide. So what are the alternatives then, Paul? What other things could this government do? What could they do now to make a difference?
Well, it's one of those things where you got to look at sort of what things have they, I wouldn't say not done, that's the wrong way to describe it, but failed to actually record. And must start off very importantly with CO2 emissions, a large area that is releasing a lot of CO2 emissions is aviation. And of course, previous climate change ministers or sections of the government have said they need to release a climate change or a aviation. I wouldn't say bill, but it's more like a target for for the aviation sector to obviously reduce its emissions, and that's great. But of course, they previously they have yet to do one. So it could be new start, a new measure for the new guy. I can't remember his name now. That's how much good.
Go on, be fair. He has only been in office as we're recording this for less than 12 hours.
Yeah,
but his name's Graham Stuart
that was
MP.
Yeah, that's it. I was going to call him Grant and Grant.
No. Different guy.
Yeah.
Different guy.
Anyway,
Graham Stuart.
So Graham Stuart, you could start on doing aviation policy. This is, as in to reduce aviation emissions. Now, which would be great because we'll be the first one in the world to have an aviation target, as well as the first one in the UK to have this goal.
So, we could sort of basically limit then the amount of CO2 given out by aircraft. So that's either going to mean that we're going to accept cleaner aircraft. We could accept less aircraft. We could have electric aircraft. There has been that one plane. I'm not betting too much on that at the moment, because I don't know if it's more than a single seater.
I think it is in regards to, I think it's 2, but that's it.
Yes, so that's going to be pretty slow. And of course, we do know that if you're going to have anything electric, if it's the electricity is generated by anything other than renewables, then that's not good.
What's the point of it?
Yeah. So aircraft are going to be a problem because they produce an enormous amount of CO2 because, they're just big engines, aren't they, really? And worse, they're high up in the atmosphere, so they deliver the CO2 just where it's needed to help with global warming.
Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate things. That's why they do. But, now to ground ourselves a bit more away from lawfully aviation is another thing, of course, that the Graham Stuart can actually attempt to tackle in relation to climate change is, of course, agriculture. Now, there are 2 sides of agriculture. You got your crops and you got your animals, animal husbandry. Okay, so for the crop side of things, it's one of those things where water intensive plants not so good. We're talking more how basically we need more food production, except of course that uses ammonium or fertilizer, and making that's pretty bad. So it sort of there needs to be sort of looking that way. And then the animal husbandry is that the UK generally needs to cut down by about 30% of its meat. I say it's meat intake. That's not quite the way I put it, but it's essentially if the UK went down by 30% meat and sort of up 30% more in grains and your vegetables and all sorts of plant-based things, then of course that saves all that emission required for the growing of the animals, and then you've got the increase of the all the corn and the grain and all those sorts of things. So
because the way it works, isn't it? You have to grow these crops for the animals to eat, and then basically turn that plant stuff basically into animal. But there are some animals that are quite efficient at doing that. Chickens are, and in fact pigs are actually pretty good. And turkeys, that they're all pretty good ways of raising meat. The worst types of meat are the two that really go out to pasture, which are sheep, and they require an enormous amount of land to keep the sheep going, growing grass, especially this year when we've had a drought and there hasn't exactly been much grass, and all the farmers have been using the winter feed. And of course, cattle, which are out in the fields and eating the grass as well. And of course, that has also not just meat, but an impact on dairy as well, because these sort of cows produce the milk comes into cheese, butter, and all the other related items there. And I have tried non-dairy dairy products, and I always worry where they come from. It's like if I offered you an ice cream, Paul,
Yes.
and you can gather that this ice cream has never really ever seen any dairy products in its life.
Yeah. So you're selling me an almond milk.
Oh
Cream.
yes. Oh, that's a really good one. Almond milk. What a wonderful thing. And if you thought that basically cattle were inefficient ways of making milk, in that you grow some grass, you then, and a lot of that, and you put the cows on that to produce the milk, and you can drink that, yeah. To do the almond milk requires hundreds times more water, and
Not great. No, I just suggested
yeah,
that was as a non-alternative.
yeah, go on it, yeah.
To the dairy. We could go for tofu, I suppose. But I'm not quite so sure whether tofu ice cream is as good as. Well, I say tofu. Anyway, right.
we're not going down the tofu arguments, are we?
No, we're moving away now.
Yeah.
Once again, in relation to all these things, is of course out of the pie of our CO2 emissions. Aviation's a big one, agriculture is a big one, but another big one is in relation to houses, and there's inside that houses, which is a sort of nearly quarter or 30%. You've got different slices. You've got, of course, the energy being put in. Of course, this is burning a sort of for heating. And then the other thing, of course, is if you're constantly heating because your heat is escaping, then that's just wasteful heating. And so, could there be a way to tackle that waste heat, and therefore you use less heat, and then it just I think very cyclic in regards to being more energy efficient in the house. And once again, the government earlier on did this green homes grant, but of course it was scrapped after 6 months.
Yeah, launched in 2020, and sort of by 2021 it's gone.
And so it's one of those things where the criticism of the whole policy was that it was poorly implemented. Now we could see it again, possibly, if someone can go back and actually implement it a whole lot better. Then perhaps that's one thing that Graham Stuart could sort of lead and sort of progress.
You're remembering his name now.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm not having to actively remember, so it's one of those things where it's in. But so those are the sort of immediate things. We were talking commonly, sort of Liz Truss has got a new government car, in relation to the old car, of course, is being retired, so they've got to get a new one, and it's changing from being a Jaguar to an Audi. That's just down the side. But the critical point in relation to all that is the fact that sort of why could they not ask for an electric car? Because, of course, the ministers who have been driven around all over the place, is it really critical that they need a petrol? Because if they're just scooting around the different parts of, London and things,
Yeah, I'd even argue it's worth her having two cars. I'd be quite happy with her to have the Audi for long distance driving, where she's got to go a long distance. I'd be quite happy with that. If that when she's just going to pootle to the House of Parliament from 10 Downing Street, then why not have an electric vehicle? I can understand she doesn't want to catch the bus, or she doesn't really want to walk. I can understand that because of security and all the other things. But an electric car to take them that short distance,
Almost like a shuttle, but not quite.
well, yeah, I don't see why that couldn't be implemented.
And that's a free win, you see, because it's one of those things where they're needing a new car. You know, you get on that. You know, it's a free win, and it looks like you're being responsible without actually changing much.
And as long as it was powered by renewable energy, why not have sort of lots of solar panels on 10 Downing Street?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's the right face, is it?
I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, but anyway,
When they did Big Ben, they could have stuck some sort of nice sort of solar panels on that. That would have looked good, wouldn't it?
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so you can see sort of, there are things and implementations that can happen. It's just whether or not they've got the will, or even the, not the way, but sort of the willingness to actually commit and actually to think about, oh, that'd be a nice idea, or to do something like that. So now that we've got through the sort of what have they been failing to do, let's now talk about what
could they do?
could they now do?
Or even should, perhaps. So I look at this country and I look around, and everywhere I keep going, I keep running into this thing called the sea. I tried to get to France and I hit the sea. I tried to go, well, anywhere, and you keep hitting the sea. And you think, well, okay, we've got the sea, we've got all those waves. So could we not have River Severn? Could we not have that tidal barrier put in? I know people talk about the hassle of the sort of poor little fishes that are going to suffer.
I mean, yeah, the blight of the fishes is tremendous.
Yeah. It's like these wind turbines. I teach science, and one of the reasons against wind turbines we have to teach the kids is the number of birds that are killed by these wind turbines. And if you visit any of these wind turbines and you have a look at the ground underneath, you will find that it's not littered with dead birds. In fact, the birds just keep away because they make a wretched sound. And the only things that seem to ignore them are the cows underneath on many of these farms. And I'm a great fan of putting some of them in the sea, and then you have all the fishes can go there because that stops the French trawlers getting round so much.
Yeah, well, that's one of the policies they did, was in protected zones put the wind turbines, because of course, to make them protected, they've got these honking things where you can't go. Yeah, it's very clever. But it is one of the things where, in relation to all this, is that one of the major things, of course, is the UK suffering from a loss of biodiversity. And so one of the major challenges or targets they could be doing is, could this guy, Graham Stuart, try to increase biodiversity? Now, it's one of those things where I'm reading here in the Climate Change Committee's report that they want to said that by doing this, let's make a nice field, make a nice wildlife reserve and all the animals, and people can go outside, see the animals, and be happier because of the nature around them. And so in theory, that would reduce stress on the NHS, which I'm not quite sure how that links, but a happier person is probably a less sicker person. So we'll glance over that. Anyway, but yes, it is the idea that there is a lack of biodiversity, or a decreasing biodiversity inside the UK. And so implementing projects to increase biodiversity should be looked at. Other things, of course, is land use. As I say, the UK wants to plant something daft, like something like 800 trees, or not 800 trees, 800 billion trees or something. I wouldn't say silly like that, but
I think the figures actually were 500 square kilometres of trees. That was the figure that I read, to restore also 80% of the UK's peatland by Magic number 2050.
So yeah, yeah, there you go. There's the right numbers. But of course, it is trying to do some of these policies and mark them out to sort of earmark these areas. But as we say, otherwise, it's the sort of the new policies on less air travel. Let's do
Yeah.
more other things, and that's right. So, but then say, well, how are you going to implement that? How are you going to work through whether it's going to be a tax or whether it's going to be flight quotas? There's a whole measure of ways to do things. It's just what does he want to do, or how does he want to tackle the problems?
Yeah, he's been in office 12 hours as of this broadcast, so I think we might give him a little bit of time to think. He probably hasn't even read all the briefs yet.
Well, yeah.
But, okay, so I was talking about the coast, and we've got, we can put loads and loads of wave machines in there as
Sure.
well. But around those, there's nothing to stop you also when you sort of play around and you fix it all up, planting lots of seagrass and doing other things to increase the biodiversity rather than just shove a machine in to do something. You can actually shove a machine in, and then you can, just as we know with the land, when you sort of put something up, you sort of landscape it. Then we can also do that with the sea. You can put in these wave machines, and we've got a lot of coast, and the waves, as far as I know, carry on nearly all the time. And you can also fix the sort of biodiversity at the same time.
Yes, and those things are, I'd say, possible, and those things are true. It depends on what the guy wants. As I said, what he should do and what he wants to do. He has yet to set his targets. He has yet to actually formally set, admittedly
Anything.
New to the job. But it depends on how adventurous, shall we say, he wants to be. Does he want to actually do something in these 2 years, or is he willing to sort of do a little bit just so they can stamp it saying, yes, we're doing things, and then after 2 years' time, after the general election, they can say, right, we're going to be doing, zero planes for now on, or something daft. That's the one of the critical points in that is sort of, it depends how ambitious this guy is, and it's almost like, see what his targets are, but we have yet to, he's yet to announce anything. He's yet to even meet his department. He's yet to say anything. So it's one of those things where we wish him to do things, but at the same time, he has yet to do anything because he's still reading the papers. He's still doing all these things. So I'm not saying not to, but we need to see what his ambitions are, and that we'll find out in the next couple of days whether he's ambitious or he's basically not a pencil pusher, but sort of someone willing just to do the bare minimum, say, do something.
Well, I can hope that he's going to come up with investing in more wind. That makes sense. More solar. That can make sense. And it depends how we implement solar, but we can do some things. He can help by sort of getting rid of more gas, basically, by pushing us more renewable, by either the wind, the solar, but by waves, by tidal. We've got some nuclear coming online. We can push these smaller nuclear reactors. They're not quite called portable ones.
Well, no.
Because when you look at them, the size of them is certainly not. But they're more for sort of much smaller sort of places than sort of huge sort of urban conurbations. We can do more with HEP. Scotland does do quite a bit of our HEP, but it is still a minuscule amount.
Well,
we've got all this biomass. If we do have to keep these cows and these sheep, why can't we sort of basically collect up their doo-doos and sort of produce more sort of methane and fuel from that? Because that is only putting back what they've they're recycling it. So this is I've forgotten the name of the term here.
Oh, I don't know. I can't help you with that one.
Uh, when you're using it up in the same year.
Oh, cyclic. Well, it's a cyclic.
Yeah, but basically, so you're putting back what you've only taken out each year, and yep, that's okay, but they still think of trees, and trees is not the best way of doing that because, as we mentioned in other broadcasts, trees take a long time to put the stuff back. So there are quite a few things he could do on renewables. We've got big policy on agriculture. He should be able to do that.
Well, it's one of those things where currently we've got the opportunity to do more push hydrogen fuel more better. Now, the
Yep.
increase in production of hydrogen into the gas supply, that will help supply that the supply there. But it's also if we can transform that fuel, all sorts of things, and that's quite a good thing because, of course, when you burn hydrogen, it makes water, which of course is
Well, it's non-greenhouse, isn't it?
yeah, I was gonna say it's CO2 free. That's the point I'm making. But it is sort of increasing investment that way, as a way instead of going from North Sea oil, it's the same right hydrogen supply, making that better. He's got there are all sorts of things that you're mentioning, all sorts of different things he can do, and there's one of the things, you know, basically importantly, is of course is the continual push on electric vehicles. Now,
Yep.
I'm not saying, the current push is there, they're slowly getting through. There's a major problem and challenge in regards to batteries, but that's coming through. But of course, it's one of those things where, if the government moved to all electric vehicles, that might persuade people. And then, of course, where is the government going to charge all these electric vehicles? Well, could you make the lampposts, I say, around Downing Street, all electric point charges, you see? And suddenly, it's one of
They're
those.
trying to get rid of cars from London, aren't they?
Well, yes. Well, they unfortunately they get rid of the cars, but it's do you get rid of the shuttle, or they're trying to increase cycling. Could you do a cycling policy and sort of try to emphasize?
Yeah, well, I haven't seen Liz Truss on a Boris bike yet.
Well, no, it's was I think there's someone wanted to put license plates on bicycles, but we can't say that.
Yeah, well, that could be even more fun. So yeah, we can. We know there's this full ban coming on petrol and diesel cars. They made that decision. They've stuck to it, and by 2030 there won't be any new petrol and diesel cars, and they will all have to be sort of electric or hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
So that they can do that. That's going to be radical. All new houses from I don't know what date it's coming up. Won't be allowed to have gas boilers. They will have to have other forms of heating done. There's legislation in there to do it, but it's a case of can they have the guts, I suppose,
Well, this is the whole.
to sort of do something.
This is the whole point in relation to currently, going through an economic downturn. We don't have much cash in the coffers, and so you got to find the best policy that has the right bang for the buck. And
But our way out is that, isn't it, Paul?
yes,
The way out of our gas crisis is let's stop using gas. Let's do renewables.
exactly. And suddenly, the price of electricity is then on the renewable price as opposed to the gas price, which then means the electricity price. I say price. They will come massively down in theory, in hope. And so suddenly, it is then as cheap as electricity could be as cheap as gas. And if they did that, then suddenly, it's one of those things where people are looking forward to sort of like there is a reason to convert, even though there's and that's one of the major things. You see, if that was a major thing, help out the sort of all the problems. If you decrease our reliance on gas, then perhaps that's the easy way to sort of get rid of it. But I think, if you decouple the energy supply from the gas price, how much could that do in relation to both economically, but also in relation to climate? Because suddenly you're now rewarding people on the greener, renewable power, as opposed to currently where it's sort of a little bit is being subsidized because we're getting on board, but suddenly you go, well, we need more of it. So could you sort of not subsidize, but you need to do something, and there is one way of doing that.
Yeah. You've been listening to the Going Green podcast, and we've been looking at this idea of, well, we've got a new government. Could we come up with a new strategy? And if Graham Stuart takes the bull by the horns, so to speak, and he takes charge of climate change, he could actually fix this other problem that we've got, which is this economic crisis, which is largely fueled by gas. We wish him well. We hope that he'll actually come up with some good solutions. And hopefully that way we can all be going green. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another pod and video cast. So we'll see you again next time. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.